Hello friends, how are you? Hope you are doing well. Let us continue our discussion related to the environmental management question and answers. Next question is about what are the characteristics of environmental leadership. So the following characteristics we can say significance of the commitment and accountability for environmental management and sustainable business practices from all levels and functions within an organization, and we give importance to determining and providing adequate resources for the establishment, implementation, maintenance of any environmental management system. There can be multiple reasons for integrating environmental management into all relevant business processes, taking ownership for the effective control, monitoring, and review of the organizational environmental aspect and impacts and protective measures. Next characteristic can be like communicating to the stakeholders about the importance of the continual improvement in the environmental performance, promoting a strong environmental culture within the organization. And next strategic leadership characteristic can be like leadership commitments in relation to the implementation and maintenance of environmental management system such as ISO 14001. Next question is about how can do the maintenance and management of the environmental practitioners competency actually. So we can think about their we can go for recognizing their limits of competency first of all, so go for gap analysis or baseline study. Then we go for advising the employers or recommending the employers about and even other relevant parties about the level of the environmental practitioners competency actually, carrying out the additional learning when required and keeping up to date with them with environmental changes actually, or maybe we can say policy changes, regulatory changes, or whatever sort of changes, we need to keep them updated about it. Encouraging and mentoring for the environmental practitioners and others as well, and use of the continuing professional development schemes and reflective learning programs for maintaining the environmental practitioners competency actually. Next question is about how can we manage environmental competency in organization. So we can first of all go for identification of the requirements to manage the competency as part of the recognized standard as ISO 14001, use of the competency within the organization to support the legal requirements, recognizing the competency levels within the organization using the skill maps, competency frameworks, and we can think about the importance of the competency checks for workforce, for contractors, and those who are working for the organization where the organizational environmental performance could be affected. Next, how we can manage the environmental competency, we can think about arrangement for trainings to acquire necessary competency and evaluating those training programs which are being undertaken, promotions of mentoring schemes, and retention of the records for the competency of the different people. Next is about what is the structure of the environmental management system. As I said earlier, there are few clauses related to planning, support, operations, performance evaluation, and continual improvement. So these are certain clauses or sections related to the structure of environmental management system. Next, what can be the benefits of implementing the ISO 14001? So we can say implementing ISO 14001 can lead to different type of benefits like improved environmental management, legal compliances, reducing the operating costs, improving the stakeholder relationships, proven business credentials, and ability to win more business actually. So we can think about reducing the resource uses, improving the overall efficiency of the business, and keeping the larger impact of the operations to an absolute minimum. So these can be certain benefits of implementing the ISO 14001 certification or environmental management system effectively. So which factors to be considered in effectively implementing the environmental management system? So we can think about, first of all, very important, context of the organization, context of an organization, the knowledge about the business functions, operations, and activities. Then we talk about the leadership, the commitment from leadership, development of environmental policies, organizational roles and responsibility. Then we talk about the planning factor like environmental aspect impact identification, assessments, and determining the control measures with life cycle perspective, and compliance obligations, actions to address the risk and opportunities, environmental objectives. So these can be some factors related to the planning part. Then certain factors related to the support section, we can think about the communication, resources, competency, awareness, control of documentation. Next is about some factors related to the performance evaluation like monitoring, measurement and evaluation, management review, how frequently we are reviewing, what is the agenda for discussion and reviews. Then we talk about the improvement opportunities. So first of all, we need to identify the gaps like non-conformities or corrective actions required. We need to have certain suitable and sufficient resources to take the actions for non-conformities and actions, corrective actions, competencies and awareness, control of the documents related to the different exercises or actions we are taking with respect to the environmental management system. Then next we go for the performance evaluation related factors, which can be like monitoring, measurement, or effective monitoring or effective measurement and evaluation of the environmental management system KPIs or objectives. We can think about the management review, improvement opportunities. So these can be certain factors related to the environmental management system implementation. Next is about identify the factors to be considered for presentation of information on environmental management performance. So we can think about how successfully or effectively we can present the information related to the environmental management performance. There are certain factors like internal and external resources or sources of information on environmental performance. So basically the collection, provision and analysis of data is impacting it. Presentation and retention of the data in any appropriate format. Development and content of corporate reports on the environmental performance, communication of that data to internal and external stakeholders, benchmarking and the use of indicators, benchmarking, peer group assessments, benchmarking studies among the competitors within the same industry or with others as well. So how to effectively implement environmental policies, procedures and systems of work in the organization. So first of all, need to include the environmental issues in the policies, like for an example, procurement policies and supply chain policies, human resource policies and different business functions related, procedures and safe system of works as well. Implementing environmental policy, procedures and system of work, integration of environmental and health and safety policies, procedure and system of the work, integrating them together, following the IMS procedures. Training and information for all the workers on the organizational environmental policies, their procedures, their system of work, dealing with complaints, most importantly, dealing with the complaints from workers and other parties regarding the environmental issues. Next question is about what can be the principles for assessing and managing the contractors. So those principles are, like we can say, scaling of the contractors use. First of all, we need to scale that. And then pre-selection process we need to define for the contractors, including provision of environmental information on the organization's aspect and impacts, managing of contractors' environmental performance, contractors' responsibilities in relation to their environmental performance as well. The next question is about development, monitoring and maintenance of emergency plans in relation with environmental pollution. So how do we go for that? So for this we need to consider certain factors related to the, first of all, we need to go for building a library for different applicable rules and regulations or legislatory requirements. So we need to identify and list those regulatory requirements, and we need to go for compliance evaluation. So an understanding of the need for emergency preparedness within any organization, need for emergency preparedness, why it is required, on-site emergency preparedness or off-site or both actually. So development and implementation of on-site and off-site emergency plans, business continuity planning, testing the emergency plans, conducting the mock drills for that, monitoring the performance and review of the emergency plans. And finally we can say communication, so dealing with the media for any environmental matters actually. Next question is about what is the systematic method for identifying environmental aspects and associated impacts with reference to, we can say, ISO 14001 2015. So identification of and the application of a life cycle perspective to the organization's products and services and activities, identify aspects for each of the products, services, activities, including inputs and outputs of the each, and decide if these aspects are direct or indirect. decide these are under normal aspects are under normal, abnormal or emergency situations, management of the changes, assessing the environmental aspects resulting from a change of any product, plant, process, machinery, and then finally identifying the impact associated with each of the aspects. Next question is about what is a systematic method for identifying environmental aspect and impact associated with it. Like we can go again for identifying the impacts associated with each of the aspect, evaluating the significance of each of the aspect and their impact. So for that we need to have data on the environmental problems, sources of information and advice on the environmental risk, use of the environmental monitoring data to evaluate that risk. Then we can go for using the biological indicators to evaluate the risk, and there are uses of the external data sources as well. So finally we can say that awareness about the relationship between source, pathway and the receptor is a very crucial factor for systematic identification of environmental aspects. And then we go for recording the significant findings, recommendations and monitor and review. Then we talk about the certain other factors related to the effective identification of environmental aspect and impact when we go for environmental aspect impact assessment. So we need to have certain clear understanding about the source, pathway, receptor model, environmental aspect, environmental impacts, the relationship between aspect and impacts, aspect and impact within the control of organization. Those can be influencing actually, and then transboundary impact. So we need to distinguish between global, transboundary, regional and local environmental effects. So the effects and impacts on the quality of life also we need to consider, like nuisance such as noise, dust, odor, visual amenity, transport related effects, waste from the consumer products like packaging. So these certain factors we need to consider for effective identification of aspect impact. Thank you very much friends. For now, we will continue our discussion from the next discussion set of questions. Thank you.